Hello, everyone. Today we are diving into Othello, one of William Shakespeare's most celebrated tragedies. This play, often referred to as a masterpiece of intrigue and even emotion, which explores themes such as jealousy, love, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of manipulation. In this lesson, we'll focus on providing a comprehensive summary of the play, ensuring you to grasp the main events and characters developments that make Othello such a timeless work. From the passionate love between Othello and Desdemona to devious scheme of the antagonist Iago, will unravel the complex human relationships we often find in Othello and the pivotal moments that drive the story forward. So it'll be quite essential for you to rather face your exams as well. By the end of this session, you will have a clear understanding of the plot structure and be well prepared to analyze the themes, characters, and key passages in greater depth. Let's let's first discuss about the social context of Othello. Where do you think that this story happens? This happens in Venice, in Italy, and Venice was considered as a sort of a country those days. Italy was the name Italy was not that popular those days, right? This takes place in Europe, in Venice. It's kind of Venetian backdrop, and there are certain important geographical elements that we have to discuss. In this picture, you find the story is connected to three continents. First, the basic setting is Europe, and we go back to Africa because Othello is from Africa, and we are quite often in a subtle manner connected to Asia as well. So the story's backdrop is Venetian Turkish war over Cyprus. You can see the little island Cyprus. There are many islands in the Mediterranean Sea. This particular, the war condition is going on between European Venice and Turkey. We all can see that Cyprus is closer to Turkey, but because of the heroism of Othello, that Venetians have already won Crete Island and Rhodes, and they are fighting over Cyprus. This is how the stories began. Even though that this has a kind of very serious conflict at the backdrop, like Venetian-Turkish war, the writer does not focus much on that macro conflict because he usually notices that there are many of the micro conflicts, human conflicts, which are much severe than the macro conflict you can find in the background. So then let's first discuss about the racial dynamics that we can find in this particular community. Othello is a mover. The Moorish community may be Muslim, Islamic, otherwise um, the writer doesn't give that much of a very clear picture about the Moor. The Moors had a little tendency of transforming themselves to Christianity as well when they moved to Europe because of their identity, their own uh, sustainability. Somehow or the other, we believe that Shakespeare uses the term Moor to mention another race. Okay, he's a black man. There we find the skin color, the racial segregation. Uh, white, black communities are mixed up in the story. Um, he's an outsider, right? So there are, different places where we find Iago's dialogues say that he is an outsider, and it is obviously pointed out as well in the story. So not only Iago, even Brabantio's dialogues often, um, the derogatory language, insulting language, showcases that they have kind of serious prejudice over the community, the black community, which Othello belongs. Um, He's a military uh, personnel, and he's kind of leader in that particular community. And but I have I have a little problem. Why then, if the whites are racist, then why he becomes a general? Shakespeare tries to showcase that Othello becomes a general mainly because of his bravery and heroism. So there are two categories, as for my knowledge, I say there are two categories in the drama in the white community. They are free in their comments about the blacks, and the others are racists, like Brabantio and Iago. This particular tension could be seen in the early 17th century in Europe, so that the writer needed to capture that and include it in the story. Then we go to gender roles and expectations. You know what gender roles are, right? So, man gender, woman gender, female, male. So they are quite um, nicely insulated in the story. Women are given different role to play, and men are given different role to play. Just for example, uh, while Othello-like heroes walk all around the world, and they tried their level best to show their heroism and, accumulate adventure for their lives. There's someone like, even though upper class, there's someone like women, they are entrapped in house, domesticated, right? They are under the control of father. So um, Othello's women in Othello are expected to be obedient and chaste. This line showcases that even Shakespeare needed to show this particular subservient level of woman in Shakespeare's time. Somehow or the other, Desdemona challenges this when she comes to the decision of marrying Othello. So she marries Othello without getting any permission from the father, which provokes the anger of father. And again, when it comes to Emilia, Emilia too showcases that she, even though she was under very powerful, nasty Iago, that she takes her, uh, she summons her powers, woman empowerment at the end of the story, and challenges mighty Othello and challenges the husband as well. Um, she questions the double standards of a male. That openly we find that she discusses the unfair justice paid by Othello to Desdemona. Sometimes, yeah, Emilia rather showcases sort of a character foil of Desdemona. Desdemona cannot behave in such a way. Desdemona cannot use derogatory language that Emilia uses sometimes, because again, Desdemona belongs to upper class, upper social class. Therefore, perhaps the writer needs another mouthpiece to talk like Desdemona at her, rough hours. So Desdemona protected, otherwise she's uh, Emilia stands for Desdemona by the end of the play. Then we find Bianca as well, even though I have not included Bianca in this list. Bianca's character is also kind of self-dependent. She challenges even upper-class men, uh, believing that she has power to control. But still, we find all the three women, all the three women display gender roles of that particular community, but still, um, they ultimately become victimized. They ultimately become victimized under the powerful hands of men. Then we get to know about class hierarchy. Venetian society is deeply hierarchical. We obviously find that. Uh, Somehow or the other, Othello's military achievements grant him a position of authority, as I said earlier, right? Somehow or the other, sense of otherness always works against him because his downfall is caused by his own follies. Again, I say that the outside forces, that some others needed for him to leave this particular arena, especially Iago's resentment, when it's almost like professional jealousy first, and after that, there's a personal jealousy as well. And again, class, racial prejudices are also there. Then marriage and patriarchy becomes another important factor we discuss in the play. Usually, in many of the plays of Shakespeare, we find that marriage comes as a kind of point that he highlights. When it comes to Midsummer Night's Dream, when the daughter is to marry someone that the father doesn't like. The father has authority to take the daughter to courts. So here also we find the court scene in Act One. Um, Brabantio gets the sole authority of the father, okay, to take Desdemona to the Duke's court. Basically, there is kind of there must be permission of the father to marry. So somehow or the other, Desdemona comes into a dilemma whether to select the father or the husband. Ultimately, she wins, right? Very in a very witty manner. Desdemona says that I have divided duty. Okay, so Desdemona shows loyalty for both, and she prefers Othello. So this decision ultimately comes into a critical point, but still, I feel at this point, to this society, this particular marriage challenges the patriarchy. Then we come to religion and morality. Christianity shapes the moral framework of the play. We all know that. Even though it is not really highlighted throughout, Christianity, uh, we all know that Venetians are Christians, and the movers' arrival would make kind of a foil, otherwise contrast to the play. But still, we don't find that the religion, Moorish, rather Islamic or something like that, is not mentioned here. But usually, the Christianity and being white make kind of a framework, kind of a moral framework to people in the story. Um, yeah, Othello's struggle with jealousy and revenge can be interpreted as moral failing influenced by Iago's manipulations, clashing with Christian ideals of forgiveness and reason. This is also kind of very important point. Then uh, we sometimes ask the question whether Shakespeare too had that idea of racism, why he's doing so. But still, I counter argument say it's not his own failure only, right? He's pushed to be a failure there by Iago, like white Christians, okay, white Christians, so that whose villainy is more highlighted. We obviously see that it is Iago's villain. Iago is a white, right, and he's a Christian as well. So that even though Othello is painted as a demon, there's another counterpart, right? So there we find both are there, blacks and white, Muslim, Moors and Christians, both are there. But still, Shakespeare allows us to get a decision. Who is bad? Is it his own decision, error in judgment, Othello's error in judgment, or else manipulation, jealousy, otherwise serious villainy of Iago in the play? Again, we find there are good ones, like Emilia, like she's not rather upper in social class, but she stands for justice. So then I know that Shakespeare makes a kind of a play, keeping certain people in front of the audience and making the audience a judge. So we have come to know which category is good. Sometimes I find, even in Jane Austen stories, in material of upper class, material of lower class, there are people who are good and bad. Okay, so good people are there in the upper class, good people are there in lower class as well, even the bad ones. So there it flattens the idea of social class and race. Then military political context, um, Venetian conflict, Venetian and uh, Turkish conflict. We call that Ottoman Empire. They are fighting over Cyprus. Othello's role as a general reflects the importance of mercenaries and foreign alliances in Venetian politics. This is another important point, right? Uh, the mercenary that in single with the Kuli Hevayu, they come to even in Sri Lankans in the World War time, Sri Lankans went to take part in the World War. They contributed to the World War, even though the conflict was not directly related to Sri Lanka. So that there was a kind of political stance in Venice. Whoever it is, if that particular person helps to win over the other party, Venetians did not think twice. So that it is shown with the Duke's contribution, the Duke's words in the first act as well, right? He prioritizes Othello's plea rather than the upper class Brabantia at the beginning. Um, yes. Then Machiavellian influence. Iago embodies the Machiavellian archetype, using cunning and manipulation to achieving his goal. Usually, Machiavelli means kind of bad politics, right? Simply, your for your understanding, I say, but search for that. His behavior reflects Renaissance fears of design undermining societal stability. This resonates with contemporary anxieties about loyalty, ambition, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. It's quite important. These words are quite important. To me, I feel that Iago is one of the best villains I have ever seen in place. Nice characterization. I don't say that Iago is nice, but still I feel Iago's characterization uh, shows us many human follies and vices, which we have to rather protect ourselves. If you just universalize this particular character, Iago-like characters are always with us. So we have to be very particular about them, right? They are mingled in the society. They usually mingle with people, and they never show their correct correct demeanor, so that we get deceived often, right? And sometimes the Othello's fate would be our fate when we really do not understand Iago's character. Okay, then key points: jealousy and passion. You all understand that jealousy is not only connected to Othello. As I said, that Iago is also jealous. He's jealous about Othello's profession, status, social status, and he knows that he's not. He is so considerate that he's not from this country. He's a black, and so jealousy comes out, and jealousy comes in terms of Othello's selection to marry Desdemona as well. In this scenario, I feel jealousy is connected to him, Iago, and it is well connected to Othello as well. What about Bianca? In Bianca's character also we find certain, yeah, plus points are there, but Bianca too ultimately becomes jealous about Cassio. When she realizes that Cassio uh, can have another relationship, right? Even though that it was kind of a physical relationship, Bianca is little connected to, otherwise addicted to Cassio. So jealousy is one of the killing human emotions, so that it is included in this. And passion, infatuation, right? We question whether Othello Desdemona relationship is um, truly, were they in love? My question is that. Were they in love? Was it kind of unconditional love, or was there a condition? If you quite read it again, you can see that Desdemona says that it was his heroism. I rather did not have adventure, so that he brought adventure to my house, so that I listened to his stories and I fell in love. On the other hand, Othello's obsession about Desdemona's beauty, even he doesn't like to harm her alabaster-looking, um, uh, alabaster-like skin, right? He tries to choke her to die. Otherwise, he doesn't want to rather harm the skin. So, will it be infatuation, passion, sense, or sensibility? That we have to recheck about that, right? So, maybe if that is kind of unconditional love, that the story would rather end up in a different note. So, this is something that we have to read again. We have to think about, right? Um, yeah, that it's unchecked by reason, right? Reason versus passion. So this can be a kind of important discussion areas as well, whether Desdemona's Othello's relationship is based on unconditional love, or else it is infatuation. So next one is perception of the exotic and the other. The other. Othello's tale of adventure and exoticism captivate Desdemona. You understand that suppose that somebody outside comes to your place and he discusses about some other country and the adventure that he experienced. We are engrossed in that. We are obsessed with that particular story, and we feel yeah, it's a story to listen, and we feel like getting that experience as well. Um, Usually, this exotic color, otherwise passion towards these exotic cultures, was there in Europe. Maybe this is an example or the experience that they get even after certain decades uh, when they started, colonizing the countries. Okay, they preferred that and that particular skin color. Sometimes the stories, adventure, exotic adventure. Now, the play mirrors Elizabethan attitudes towards movers and other non-European peoples, portraying them as simultaneously admirable and alien. This is a dilemma even I get, right? So that uh, often we find that Othello is named as a hero, tagged as a hero, and at the very beginning, we feel like, even we fall in love with Othello because such a hero, such a gentleman, but ultimately we find that he's painted as a demon. Okay, and again, such a huge personality, and how it will be rather affected by jealousy like emotion, how easily that he could be deceived by certain the machination of the antagonist Iago. So some or the other, this is controversial. We have to think about that. These are kind of very important discussion areas. We know that it's error in judgment of Othello, right? He is fated, like that's shown in the story, because he's surrounded by a lot of whites, and he becomes the only black there, so that he gets a sense of otherness as well. So that Elizabethans, not only Elizabethans, even now when you go to American communities, uh, black is there, white is there. Then they show that they are not rather ill-treating blacks. But still, this is going on. Racism, I feel that is kind of uh, fossilized in the society, so that we try to show that we are not rather affected by that. To perhaps show that we are educated people, we know about people. We try to rather, I mean, spread equality in the society for the sake of a theory, but really we do not come into that ground, right? So this would be the reality of European communities related to non-European people. Then justice and legal authority. This is another important point related to Othello. Um, High value. Venetians play high value on law and order. This is showcased at many places of the story. Actually, the Duke and the court, Graciano, at the end of the story, and their involvement, Lodovico, Graciano's involvement in the story. Once they see that Othello hits Desdemona in public, and she said, "This is not the Venetian. They highly rather place Venetian law and order, the decorum altogether on a high podium. The Duke acts as an arbiter, balancing personal grievances. And here we find, I don't know, was Duke fair? Or was he got the side that he needed to get advantage? Somehow or the other, he says that even if I had a daughter, I would give it to Othello. So maybe he's kind of his justice, right? That is what we call the justice we experience from European court. Maybe to win the acceptance from our public. Um, yes, somehow the other, the second part says, however, the justice system's failure to uncover Iago's decide suggests that the limits of human institutions and in addressing moral corruption. Often we find that even the justice is deceived by Iago. Fair justice of Venice is also deceived by Iago. It's quite complicated to understand, right? So somehow or the other, Shakespeare's attempt to showcase that uh, the European standards um, is there in the story, but all the same that he's trying to show both the sides. In my definition, I say that Shakespeare puts forward all these examples into in front of the audience for us to be the judge and otherwise jury and decide what part is good. I feel that different human qualities, right, human characters, human examples are put forward for us to judge. This is something important for us to realize in relation to the social context of Othello. Now, let's take a look at the plot. Obviously, we know that there are five acts and that symmetrical, narrative structure is there in the play. Usually, five-act plays were very popular those days. It was kind of sort of a traditional structure we found in uh, the time of the traditional, otherwise pre-modern theater. So we get first act, second, third, fourth, and fifth. If I think, I mean, tell about the setting. Right, first act takes place in Europe, Venice, and the second, third, fourth, and fifth acts take place in Cyprus, in the Mediterranean Sea. So there's a scene shift, right? Setting shift from first act. By the end of the first act, they leave Venice and they go to Cyprus. There's a reason because Cyprus is a battleground, a warlike island. That's how Shakespeare says, warlike island. The war is between Venetians and Ottomans. Somehow the Cyprus is closer to Ottoman Empire. It's a kind of strategic point for Ottomans so that Venetians do not allow them to get in. So that figure in this particular war is Othello. So Act 1 consists of three scenes. The setting, the stage for betrayal, that is how Act 1 is named. The play opens in Venice, introducing themes of jealousy and manipulation. You all know that Act 1, Scene 1 takes place in front of Brabantio's house. Iago, Rodrigo bring the backstory of the story to the audience, like the conspirators. I mean, sorry, Othello offers a position to Cassio, okay, off capping that from Iago. Iago wanted to get that, but Othello offers that to Cassio. So that becomes one place where we find Iago maintains jealousy related to Othello's decision, otherwise Othello's position. It's professional jealousy. And there's another place where we find personal and romantic jealousy connected to this particular story, connected in this particular story. One is Othello and Desdemona's elopement. Unconditionally, I find that he's jealous. Iago is jealous. No, he doesn't have any serious idea regarding marrying Desdemona, others having connection with Desdemona, but he's unconditionally jealous. And on the other hand, he manipulates another upper class money Venetian, that is Rodrigo. He's a he's a gullible personality, and he diminishes certain standards that we all keep regarding upper class white community, upper class Venetians. Is easily manipulated. He's open for manipulation always, right? So that this showcases that Shakespeare does not always show the follies of the lower class and blacks. That upper class follies are also there. Vices are there, right? So then this is the place where we find, Cassio's uh, of position is and how it is offered. That is, it showcases that Iago is jealous about that. It is shown in Act One, Scene One, and again we find um, Othello's elopement, so that both are there. And again, that they attempt to rather show, I mean, attempt to reveal this to Brabantio. It is not for pure purpose. It is to raise anger, raise tension in the story, and to um, go against Othello, right? He's trying to stay in the shadows and he's trying to provoke Brabantio and the upper class plan to go against um, Othello. Scene two, uh, Iago is there in scene one, and he secretly goes into where Othello, the place where Othello lives, that is Sagittary, the camp, right? So there, he stays and he goes there and says, Brabantio is in search of you. They are coming now. They are raising. They are aroused with violence and all. He's against you, right? So that we, at the very first, we find that Iago's double standards, double standard character is highlighted. Like he's dual tongued, right? So Brabantio's outrageous. Okay, he's outrageous. So again, Brabantio's character is also kind of very complex, right? And he loved Othello, he loved his stories, but all the same, without summoning his sense that he straight away comes into action because of his love to his daughter. He often says that my daughter was innocent and he was upper class, she was upper class and she had upper class behavior. This Black Ram deceived my daughter. It's not a daughter's fault. Basically, it happens. He takes the side of his own daughter. Uh, you know, loading all the accusations to Othello. So there we find that Othello's calm nature, cool nature is presented in the story, highlighting that he's a gentleman. He's proper to become the general of Venetian army, and it's proper to marry a woman like Desdemona, which gives a kind of a contrast. Okay, juxtaposition of Brabantio, Iago, Rodrigo with Othello display that he's more a gentleman rather than the others. Scene three is quite important. This is the court scene. Uh, Brabantio, Desdemona, the Brabantio, Othello go to court in front of Duke that the case is summoned. So there we find even Duke gets a side of Othello. As I discussed earlier, there may be certain personal favors because the country is under war. So that uh, Othello being the general is quite important. And again, he shows the Venetian law order showing justice there. Saya, he find that Othello confirms that he didn't use any black magic, while Brabantio says that Othello used black magic to capture Desdemona. The term black magic is also another controversial term we find. At this particular scene, even Othello show that does not say that he used black magic. In the handkerchief incident, something comes out which makes audience curious about Othello's use of black magic. Othello says that losing handkerchief is a problem for their relationship because Othello's mother rather convinced him that the handkerchief must be there with him, with the Desdemona, if to keep the marriage uh, forever, like otherwise the relationship tightened. It was his mother's experience with Othello's father. So there we find I get a question whether Othello too had that particular belief, mythical belief regarding his relationship. And it foreshadows what is to happen in the future as well. Losing handkerchief is quite important. So handkerchief is a central symbol of this play. Further, we find that it gives us something to think about the future of this particular play. Someone in the Desdemona comes to a crucial position. She was in a dilemma, but she very nicely, strongly uh, faces the courts and gives a nice speech, right? I have divided duty, father. When my mother married you, my mother left everybody and took care of you. Let me do the same. It showcases her witty nature, and she's her self-automation as well. Basically, we find that Desdemona uh, gets decisions. Otherwise, her decisions are a little independent, right? She doesn't discuss with any. She gets her decisions, right? This ultimately creates certain confusion in the story as well when she gets decision to help Cassio. So there is no sort of communication with the husband and Desdemona. She gets a decision where she doesn't find that the husband is angry about that decision. That particular insulation is there, communication is there, but there is sort of misunderstanding. They don't empathize with each other. So not empathize. Actually, they don't talk much about their, decisions, perhaps, especially Desdemona. Desdemona doesn't summon the consultancy of the husband when thinking about helping Cassio, which creates a ultimate disaster. So then we go to Act 2, Scene 1. This is named as Seeds of Suspicion, right? This is the place where Iago summons the suspicion of Othello, which ultimately demolishes his standard personality. Um, yeah, they get the news that by the end of the court scene, Act 1, Scene 3, they get the news that that Othello has to go, and Desdemona to decides to go to Cyprus with Othello. This again showcases uh, how people intermingle professional and personal life, which ultimately ends up with a disaster, which one even neither is success. So we often find that Desdemona following Othello in his professional work is highlighted, right? And by the end of the tail end of the drama, like we find Iago convinces Rodrigo we have to remove Cassio because Cassio is appointed as a leader of Cyprus Island. If he is appointed and if Othello is sent somewhere, even Desdemona will follow Othello. Then you can't see her. So then we have to remove Cassio. Then Othello will be the person who is to in charge in this area. So this is also another personal, I mean, human rather weaknesses, right? With the, I mean, Shakespeare highlights. We all see that Desdemona as a kind of true white figure, right? But I advise you to go through that and find out what problems are there, what errors are there, what error in judgment is there in Desdemona as well. And people say that her decision to marry Othello is also a wrong decision. It is justified at the end of the play by the Venetian officials who came from Venice to Cyprus. And one says that if your father was there, that the father would die seeing this particular tragedy. So remember that as well. Um, Yes, the stone is a symbol, like it gives pathetic fallacy to the play. And again, we get situational irony. By the end of Act 3, Scene 3, Act 1, Scene 3, we expect sort of a war between. The first time I would expect there would be a depiction of war between Venetians and Ottomans, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't take place, right? Some or the other, this would be kind of a foreshadowing of the chaos, the stormy human feelings that people would experience in the future. Iago begins to manipulate the character, exploiting Cassio's politeness towards Desdemona. So again, we find that the Cassio is a foil to character foil to Othello. He's a white, and his behavior is so white, and his language is so decorous. So it's not Othello the suitable, according to Iago. It's Cassio to marry Desdemona. He doesn't have that. Cassio must also doesn't have an idea. Cassio must marry Desdemona. Even that he will be jealous about that as well. But still, he's the bait. Cassio doesn't know that he's baited. That is a dramatic irony we find in the play. Okay. So then the celebration reinforces a brief harmony in Cyprus, contrasting with the conflict brewing in the characters' relationship. Iago's control over events becomes evident. Iago skillfully manipulates Cassio, and Cassio's human nature is manipulated. That is taken as a weakness. Cassio has certain weaknesses, like he is obsessed with alcohol and women, and there we find Iago is really good at seeing the human weakness and attacking that. Okay, and again, Cassio note. I mean, sorry, I'm sorry. Iago note. I'm talking about Iago, right? Iago notices Cassio's weakness. Iago notices Othello's weaknesses as well. What is the best weakness of Othello? It is Desdemona. right? If he loses Desdemona, that would be the end of his heroism. That is what Iago notices in the play. Um, yes, Iago's skillful manipulation of Cassio reveals his ability to exploit human weaknesses. Cassio's loss of reputation and Iago's advice to seek Desdemona's help begin the tragic chain of events. This scene deepens the theme of appearance versus reality. Throughout, we find the appearance versus reality runs as a central theme. And again, this scene actually showcases something important. Um, you understand the drunken brawl created in calm and quiet background of Cyprus. It was planned, right? It was set actually. Uh, Cassio didn't know that. Cassio starts violating the calm and quiet attitude of Cyprus, and that makes a tragic event, which ultimately Othello decides to downgrade Cassio from his profession. So that there he weaves a net, Iago weaves a net. If Cassio comes closer to Desdemona, that would be the reason to raise jealousy in Othello. Without knowing that, Cassio walks into that. Okay, even Desdemona doesn't know that, so she walks into the trap. Okay, this is what we call the recurrent use of dramatic irony in the play. Act 3, Scene 1. Again, this happens in Cyprus. Cassio's reliance on Desdemona foreshadows Othello's misinterpretation of their interactions. Right? For example, when Desdemona talks to Cassio, it's easy for the villain, the antagonist, to weave a story and show that to Othello. Okay, so that he gets a use of many characters to manipulate the mindset of Othello. Scene 2 displays Othello's brief focus on military matters juxtaposes eventual descent into personal turmoil. This is what we call Othello's distraction. In the previous one, when Cassio's problem happens, Cassio actually repeatedly says that my reputation, I lost my reputation because he really valued that. And there, Iago says that reputation is not very important, right? It's something else. We have more important things rather than that. Here in Othello's case, Othello really measured his profession as one of the best. But now we find that he's rather determined to move away from that. He's trying to get into something else. His mind is diverted. And it is showcased in his change of language. Actually, call that linguistic divergence. Linguistic divergence, search for more. Linguistic divergence means, along with the change of psychology of people, we see the different, change of language. It is common to many of the literary pieces we have. Like in July's people also, we find July's language changes from uh, very obedient language to commanding language by the end of the story. The loving, sweet language of Othello and how it changes by and by uh, is also showcased in the story. That is also showcased in the story. It showcases the changing mindset of Othello. The technique is linguistic divergence. Scene 3, this scene marks Othello's transformation. This is quite important. Act 3, Scene 3. Manfred's Othello's vulnerabilities using insinuation and handkerchief to fuel jealousy. This is the place where we find the central symbol. You all know what handkerchief means, and I discussed this at the very early discussions as well. Handkerchief is a romantic gift, and losing that makes Othello vulnerable. And he believes that it is sort of a breaking of trust, fragile trust. Trust is very fragile, right? So that it is showcased in the story to showcase that this kind of human weakness. Desdemona doesn't know anything, right? Desdemona even doesn't know why Othello is blaming him. right? So this again showcases that Desdemona is also vulnerable because she's not able to realize what's going on. He doesn't know how to understand, otherwise see clearly what is good and what is bad. This is something really important for us to realize. Okay, Othello's obsession with handkerchief symbolizes growing irrationality. Okay, we know that sense and sensibility are two driving forces. We find that Othello is more sensitive than uh, more um, reason. Okay, it becomes a tragic token ultimately, right? Othello questions about the handkerchief, but Desdemona doesn't have that handkerchief with her now. So, Act 4, jealousy unleashed. Othello's physical and emotional breakdown. This is Act 3 is the climax, total transformation of Othello's mindset from reason to passion. It is not the last scene that we see. It is not the climax. Last scene is not the climax, right? It's a total transformation of a hero, the personality of a hero. We usually take it as the climax of the story. Actually, in symmetrical place, we find Act 3 uh, marks the climax, right? But not in modern and postmodern place. Like in the Glass Menagerie, we don't find the climax at the exact middle. They are asymmetrical plot outlines. Emotional breakdown highlights a corrosive effect of jealousy, right? Jealousy devours his personality. Um, yeah, Iago manipulates him into eavesdropping on Cassio, further twisting the narrative. He makes the plot more complicated, asking Othello to eavesdrop what Cassio says about Bianca. But Othello's jealous mind and a lack of sense at that particular time believes that he is not talking about Bianca, he's talking about Desdemona. So that he becomes a more vengeful sort of a husband. Scene 2, Desdemona's steadfast love and Emilia's defense of her character contrasts sharply with Othello's accusations, right? We find that Emilia comes as a standard, she comes as a very strong woman, empowered woman identity at this hour. And it showcases, even though she's kind of, you know, lower to Desdemona's social class, she has more reason. And that is why I say that Shakespeare is not a racist, it's not class conscious. He showcases the follies of both, good of both, vices and goodness, both are shown related to many social classes and races, right? I mean, she's loyal to Emilia's remarks about dishonesty begin to expose Iago, right? Now we know that throughout this act, we find that honesty comes as one of the recurring topic. Second scene, Desdemona's steadfast love and Emilia's defense of her character contrast sharply with Othello's accusations, right? Uh, Emilia loves Desdemona as a mistress, and she repeatedly says that my mistress is pure. But whereas Othello accuses, so this gives a kind of juxtaposition. Remarks about yeah, but her loyalty to him delays the truth. Desdemona's sorrowful song ends, the song of Song of Willow. It is kind of parallel, shows a parallelism, right? It's the fate of Desdemona, which is sung in that song. Uh, yeah, Emilia underscores her innocence and foreshadows a tragic death. This cannot happen, right? Emilia feels the disaster. Themes of your loyalty, love, and gender dynamics are explored. You know what gender dynamics means, right? Throughout the story, we find that definition related to gender changes constantly. So this is quite important for us to realize. So by this time, we know certain towering personalities start falling off. Othello is one, and again Desdemona. Desdemona is also downhearted. So again, we find rising personalities like Emilia, who rather showcases herself as a strong woman. This may be kind of an attempt of Shakespeare to show that even though Desdemona Even though she's in agony, she doesn't use that much of rough language, right? She doesn't complain about the husband even at the death, right? There she tries her level best to keep her loyalty and honesty and even trust as well that she kept for husband. Therefore, she perhaps Shakespeare makes another mouthpiece like Emilia to accuse Othello. She accuses Othello very, I mean, severely by the end of the play, which must be done by Desdemona. Desdemona gets a peaceful and decent death. I don't rather like to say there's a decent death, but she doesn't open her mouth and accuses Othello. She says, it's my fault. It's not my husband's fault, right? So it has kind of a very serious definition as well. I'll be talking about that in the next one. So, tragic climax. Okay. So there we find the attempted murder of Cassio showcases Iago's willingness to eliminate any threat to his schemes. So we find that there's a scheme going on to eliminate Cassio. I told you at the beginning. Rodrigo becomes a bait in that. He is convinced that if you want to get Desdemona somehow or the other, you have to eliminate him. Otherwise, Othello will rather move away from this island, and then even Desdemona will follow. Rodrigo's death silences a potential whistleblower, while Cassio's survival complicates Iago's plans. Right? So that again we find situational irony. Plan was to kill Cassio, but it happens on the other way. Rodrigo gets epiphanies, sudden realization that he was under evil of Iago at this particular point, right? Rodrigo uh, assaults, Iago assaults Rodrigo to die, right? This showcases even Rodrigo realizes that he was in a plan. So this shows that the more serious villain that we find in any Shakespearean plays is Iago because he tries his level best to achieve his success, uh, even eliminating anyone from his life. Even he attempts to assault Emilia as well. So remember that. Scene two, Act five, Scene two. It is a the most felt um, area in the occasion of the story. We somehow the other people find it as a climax, but I find that the main character Othello's psychology's diversion is in Act three, Scene three. Othello's murder of Desdemona represents the culmination of Iago's manipulation, Othello's internalized insecurities. This is something very important, right? It's not. Many say that it is Iago's manipulation, but still, I too feel that he too has certain personal. Uh, he must have personal control, but he doesn't use that uh, after scene two, like if he's so his mind was wandering, and it was rather open for vulnerabilities. Then we find that Othello is named as a hero is a question to me. Maybe it's very ironic, right? Um, yeah, Emilia reveals the truth about the handkerchief. There we find Othello gets the self-realization, and he goes for the confession as well. Um, Wife is dead. He asked, my wife, where is my wife? I don't have a wife. At that time, his total dilemma, total confusion. Rather than that, he's total traumatic at that moment when he comes to know that truth was not what he believed. Okay, when he comes to know that Iago very smoothly manipulated him, that he feels so sorry about what he has done. Okay, revelation of truth, but at great cost. Yeah, it is kind of it has already paid a great cost, right? It has Desdemona has paid from her life. Othello's suicide is a tragic resolution. He rather he suicides, restoring some sense of his honor, but underscoring the devastating effects of jealousy and betrayal. Uh, this is the last note that we had been talking about all this downfall of a great figure. Okay, which makes catharsis in the audience. Audience gets so emotional at this particular point because we know both were not seriously wrong. Okay, both were not seriously wrong, but they had to pay off from their lives. A beautiful love story started, uh, ends up in a tragic note, which gives us a certain food for thought as well. Food for thought as well. Iago's silence leaves his motives enigmatic, cementing his role as a symbol of pure malice. And Iago is arrested; he's not killed. So it makes perhaps it's a kind of suggestion that uh, evil is there still in the society, right? Iago, like people, are still in the society. They are mingled. Maybe living is a more punishment than dying, maybe. But still, I feel that Iago, like people, have no conscience to feel their own problems. Then I feel it's quite essential for us to understand the characters and um, study the characters thinking out of box. We all know that there are protagonists and antagonists in traditional plays, clearly defined protagonists and antagonists. There are margins, okay, clear lines between them. But still, I find that almost all the characters are the consequences they meet in life. Othello becomes a in who is the villain that but ultimately Othello too becomes a villain of the story, right? Is he the villain? It's kind of made to be villainous. Okay, so these are the points that we have to discuss in relation to the plot outline. So I'm going to meet you in my second video related to Othello to discuss the narrative, literary devices, and thematic concerns. Um, okay, goodbye to you. Thank you.